March of this year, we called a lobby of a rally at Westminster, and we discussed with our lawyers. We said we're thinking we should do something a little bit confrontational. We're going to walk across to Downing Street or Parliament. And our lawyers said, "Oh, you'll get lifted straight away." And we had 4,000 firefighters there. And I said to them, well, I'm going to walk across Parliament Square to that building over there, and if you want to come with me, you can come with me. And they did. And there was 4,000 of us. And try as we might, actually, the police didn't do a jot. Then what can 40,000 workers, what can 400,000 workers do if we all organise together? We still have that power, and the question is, can we realise that power and bring it together and use it? Thanks very much.
Yes, we've got a argument upstairs, in the TV stream, the General Counsel, they should give a lead. That's absolutely right. But if they don't, and if Matt's right, and we have to wait for the call to come, and we might wait and wait and wait, then under that basis, right, stuff, just in the way that people rallied round the workers of the National Gallery, just in the way that people rallied round the workers at SOAS, we have to make a decision. If one group of workers is attacked in that way, if one group of workers finds themselves with agency workers being bussed across their picket lines to scab and to break their strike, then we will mobilise under that basis. We will build hundreds and we will get thousands onto their picket lines and the rest of it. Now that's just to finish, that's easy to say, isn't it? Because you can talk about the general strike, you can talk about mobilising, you know, that's difficult, right, stuff around it. But we have to start winning an argument now, don't we? What we do in each workplace, what we do on each stewards committee, right, stuff, what we do at each regional council, what we do in each college or campaign group and the rest of it, we have to win an argument that this is a fundamental attack. It's a fundamental attack on our basic civil liberties, our basic right to withdraw our labour. Under that basis, when the first time they use this legislation, we have to make sure that they think twice about ever using that legislation again. We've beaten anti-trade union laws in the past, we can beat them again.
People don't join a trade union in order to get cheap insurance or even to get the benefit of a legal department to bring claims if they're injured or contract an industrial disease. People join trade unions in order to get the benefit of collective representation. That is to say, collective bargaining, negotiating with the employer the terms and conditions of work. And of course we understand that many people are unemployed, will never have the benefit of collective bargaining. Pensioners have passed that phase in their lives. But their standard of living depends on those who are at work and organising trade unions demanding better terms and conditions. So the first attack in this legislation is on the right to strike in order to undermine collective bargaining. The second line of attack is on the political funding of political expenditure of trade unions. Of course, we all understand that's really to take money away from the Labour Party, especially the Labour Party under its new leadership. But it's also to deny trade unions a political voice. That's what they want. They want to destroy them industrially, and they want to destroy them politically as well. Now, many of these changes, many of the proposals in this bill are in breach of international law. But I want to just reassure this audience that though it was possible to challenge some of these things in British courts or international courts, if anybody here seriously thinks that the effect of this bill is going to be defeated by lawyers like myself or in courts, they are living in a wonderland. The only way that this bill is going to be defeated is by complete unity of the trade union movement and all the community groups, many of them who are represented here today. Absolute unity, absolute determination against this bill.
What this victory has given to our whole they previously were. A year ago, anti-austerity policies were still seen as cranky or Greek. Now, even Dave Prentice is apparently fully converted. Jeremy Corbyn and the masses who supported him are transforming our movement into a real force to be reckoned with. My General Secretary in PCS, Mark Zawatka, says, if you don't fight, you can't win. Well, we in Unite the Resistance are proud to have supported trade unionists who are fighting and, most significantly, winning. Those in SOAS, those in the Glasgow Homelessness Workers Department, the Dundee NHS Porters, Bridgewater Postal Workers, and, of course, the magnificent National Gallery strikers. Yesterday was Children in Need Day again. 1 in 5 UK kids are living in poverty, and this is the 4th richest economy in the world. You know, brothers and sisters, under the Tories, it's been Children in Need Day every day for the last 6 years. I don't know if you've seen the latest Sainsbury's Christmas advert yet. I asked in my office and everyone has seen it, but here on the bus down, some of the people have been reading Engels instead. I would advise you to watch it. Now don't worry, I haven't lost the plot, I haven't got shares in them, I don't even shop there. I'm a low-paid public sector worker, I shop in Morrison's and Aldi like everyone else. But actually, I like the Sainsbury's Christmas advert, and so do the vast majority of the population, as you'll see if you go on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is. Because it pierces through the Tory bullshit that says that what we want is a me, me, me society. We don't want that at all, do we, brothers and sisters? No. Instead, it paints a picture of a neighbourhood that we're living, and a neighbourhood that we want to live in. And the message in that advert is that Christmas is a time for sharing. Well, we all want that. The time is right. 2020 is too late. Join Unite the Resistance now. Fight the Tory divide and rule. Support the doctors' strike and build mass strike action that the Tories fear so much to defeat the anti-trade union laws, low pay and austerity. Let's make austerity George Osborne's poll tax moment. Protest, strike back, fight back. Until we break the rule of austerity and kick out this vicious Tory government. Together we can, together we can.
And it's completely obvious that what we need is national action. We need national strike action. It needs to be coordinated. Needs to be discussing, and what the left in general needs to have a strategy, is how we get to that. And I think the lesson from our strike is that we can't wait for that national action. And in PCS, in the culture sector, we haven't waited. We have strikes in the National Museums of Scotland, in National Museum in Wales, where actually they're in talks with ACAS now, and at the National Gallery in London, where, as people know, we didn't just win the, I'm really pleased to be back at work, but we also won fantastically the best possible guarantees you could for anybody being faced with privatisation. And the way that we did that, I mean, I think what it shows is, it's a very obvious lesson: strikes work, strikes win, solidarity wins. And in figures, and I've been doing this, but it's just because it's so impressive, I think, it shows the mood there is for resistance around this country, and that's what we've got to mobilise. It shows how political the mood there is around this country, and the desire for a fight back. 130,000 people signed our petition. We raised over £180,000 for our strike funds. You can't wait until you've got the support before you take the action. You have to take the action, and then you'll get the support. Sometimes you won't be able to wait to do it legally either, and that's what they showed at SARS. in Bridgewater. And actually, I mean, I know that some people took reinstate candy posters and changed the C to an S for Sandy. But what they showed, actually, is not just that strikes work and solidarity works, but unofficial work, strikes, work quicker. And Sandy got back to work in a week. We have the possibility of beginning to win those victories. That's how we can stop and challenge the anti-union laws now that it's been passed, but it's also how we can involve a whole new generation of people who haven't seen the trade unions as being relevant to them. That's how we can connect with them and begin to build the effective action that will build the movement that we need to overturn this government and start being on the front foot for a change.
It was only, what, 7 months ago, that's on May the 8th, we all woke up rather depressed, to say the least, when we found that the Tories had won not just won the election, but won a small majority. 7 months on, though, we have seen a growing resistance to the Tory policy. All of us were very concerned, and still are, about what this vicious government does. It is about passing trade union laws, but it's about much more than that, isn't it? It's about attacks on every working person in Britain, and particularly the most vulnerable. But as I say, we're talking 6-7 months on, we have seen a massive development, I think, an important development in terms of resistance to this Tory government. You remember 250,000 people who demonstrated on June the 25th, the People's Assembly demonstration. It shows something rather different. It's a different demonstration. It was younger, it was dynamic, and there's people there clearly saying we cannot wait for 2020 to change, we have to resist now. We see again 80,000 people take to the streets of Manchester when the Tory Party conference was on. And of course the brilliant demonstration on September the 12th, where you saw 100,000 people demonstrating support of migrants in this country, making it clear, whatever the government throws at us, we will not allow the racists, the attempt to divide working people. It's the clear oldest card they use is to divide us against each other. And that demonstration showed that people aren't going to fall for that threat. So we see those resistance taking place. But I think something else happened on that same day, rather mentioned, but I think it's worth highlighting that, and that's of course the election of Jeremy Corbyn to the leadership of the Labour Party. You know, it's a funny old one. Who would have thought on the same day that 100,000 people in London demonstrated against migrants, that you also see the election of Jeremy Corbyn, and now of course the Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell as well. It shook the establishment. They didn't understand it. They simply did not get it, where it's coming from. But honestly, I think for most people, is it that much of a surprise? When you think about what the level of bitterness, the level of anger, the level of hatred towards what is going on. We saw what took place in Scotland with the SNP. That is something that didn't quite break through the election, but certainly Jeremy Corbyn's victory, a 60% victory, showed clearly what is right. And the attacks on him now, I'll come thick and fast. I'm proud that United Resistance launched a statement in support of Jeremy Corbyn, getting 10 General Secretaries. It's still up there on the website. Please, if you haven't signed it, please do. Because we understand an attack on Corbyn, an attack on the Shadow Chancellor, is an attack on every single one of us at this moment in time, because they are being attacked because of their stance of being anti-austerity, anti-racist and anti-war. This conference today has many, many workers from DPAC, from the campaign about London Met, the junior doctors, the hotel workers, Sotheby's. Lots of us coming together today to organise, to discuss how we build those networks, how we build the solidarity in our workplaces. Because as John says, the trade union laws are there to attack us, and they will. However, there is law. It's not about campaigning to stop that bill being passed. It has been passed. The question for us is, how do we build a stronger movement in every workplace, in every community, that can stop that law? And it means, and it will mean, defying that law. That's the discussion we had today. I hope you enjoyed the conference. Solidarity.
Read my lips, Ian Duncan Smith. DPAC are coming for you. We will never stop resisting you. And I promise you this. We will up the ante of resistance against you. We will continue to be defiant, unrepentant, and with fire in our bellies. We will pile the pressure on you, and we will force you out of office.
cuts to tax credits, and despite the government being defeated in the House of Lords, you cannot be complacent on this. This could be David Cameron's poll tax, the policy that can bring the government down. Let's not just talk about it, let's turn the words into coordinated action and make it happen. Now is the time to fight up, stand up for what you believe in. Now is the time to take action to get the Tories out. I now ask all of you to join me in this message to Ian Duncan Smith and David Cameron. While there is no justice for us, there will be no peace for you. So you ready? No justice!
No peace!
No justice!
No peace!
Thank you for the invitation to speak to you today. Have a great conference, and on behalf of the occupiers of Parliament and the road blockers of Westminster Bridge, DPAC sends solidarity. Thank you.
My name is Hendy Nash, I'm 24 and I'm here to talk to you about the Sir John Cass Faculty of Art, Architecture and Design. When I was growing up north, my mother worked tirelessly to provide a life for me after my father died, and because of my situation, the fact that I was artistic and not academic, I wasn't invested in. I was told that if I didn't conform, that I wouldn't make anything of myself, that I wouldn't be anybody. When I finally went back into education and applied to university, the Cass was the only one that gave me an interview. The Cass saw something in me that clearly others didn't. On the 9th of October, the Vice-Chancellor, John Raftery, announced that they were to sell our art building in Aldgate East and move Art to Holloway Road under the One Campus, One Community Act. From a personal point of view, though I will be able to finish my degree, they will cut the MA courses, which will result in job losses. I can't tell you all how hard this has hit everybody. We're a family at the Cass, and we refuse to take this lying down. My tutors in photography, established photographers, people like Mick Williamson, Anya Dabrowska, Spencer Rowell, Heather McDowell and Sue Andrews, have opened something up inside of me that I never knew that I had. And I'm not the only one. They showed me that I'm worth something and that my voice matters, and I refuse to be deprived of my right to an education and of their tutoring. Sorry. Refuse to be silent while they destroy what they have built along with the head of the building, Rosie McGoldrick. It's going to be destroyed and it's not on. The education is for the working class too. The Cass knows this, and as a result of one of the highest percentages of black students, people from poor backgrounds, young single mothers, and they fully encourage women with families to go back into education. We need everybody here to promote us and help us in the fight to save our building. And in doing so, you're not just saving us, you're saving the arts as well. This is important because art does make people powerful. And my mother didn't raise a quitter, and the Cass have given me a voice.
They're not paying for the 1.5 hours travel per day, and they're making examiners do 2 extra tests extra per week for no pay. A PCS say, and we said it in the pensions and we'll say it again, that the whole mantra of this government is working longer and hard, making us work longer and harder for less. Many of our members, interestingly, are ex-police and ex-army. 350 staff we have that are short inside the dispute. But let me tell you, we recruited 250 new members in a month. We have new union reps, many are part-time women. And as I said, we have a 2-day strike this Thursday and Friday. Now I want to say something quickly as well about the HMRC, because we've had the 700 people in the National Gallery, 2,000 driving examiners and so forth, and now an attack on 58,000 members in the HMRC, a complete closure of 170 offices down to 13 hubs. And comrades in HMRC aren't here today, our comrades, because they're meeting to actually discuss how they deal with that. So they send their greetings to you. But it follows in HMRC complaints that the service in contact centres was poor and there was not enough staff, as we know, has been part of that dispute. But the Tory answer to that is not to introduce new staffing, but but to close the service down completely, to put it online and to make the public do the job that our members have been doing. It's also payback for the tax justice campaign that we've run. And our response, as Cammy and others have said, has to be economic and political. We have to work with others to promote tax justice, exposing their cronies that aren't paying taxes, the 122 billion in avoiding and uncollected taxes. We have to call on our leaders in our movement, Jeremy, John, but many other trade union reps across our movement, tax justice campaigners and others, to address our members in the HMRC, because we need walkouts and we need strike action in order to deal with that. We also need to do one other thing, I think, and that is to link across on some of the disputes that we have. And if we can, let's try and link the junior doctors as well when they take their action. I want to finish by saying this. We are for people, they are for profit. The fight's starting and we intend to win it.
Thank you very much, and it's great to see and feel the energy and the numbers in the hall. But I think today we do need to start by thinking about Paris for a second and think about sending our sympathy and solidarity to the people of Paris, the fear, the suffering, the grief in Paris today. So I just wanted to begin by saying that, and I'm sure you'll all join me. A huge threat to our human rights is the trade union bill, and we've got to stop it. It's an attack on our human rights. And it's also an attack on the future of our economy and society. These are the rights that we fought for, the rights that are essential to maintain our communities, to protect our local businesses, to protect the wages of our workers. But also, one of the interesting things is that you actually, when you see, when Britain acquired, and it sadly has continued, the most repressive trade union laws across Europe, when those laws came in, is immediately when inequality starts to rise. You look at the graphs. And the interesting thing is even the IMF and the World Bank now are saying that inequality is a threat to our economic future. So we need to say that this trade union bill is also a threat to our economy, and we've got to fight for a fair economy, a different kind of economy in the future. We are the only country in Western Europe with indefinite detention of immigration detainees. People are locked up, and if we focus on particularly Yarlswood, where there's a strong and ongoing, and I urge you to support a campaign to close Yarlswood, there is people locked up, not charged with any offence, not accused of any offence, locked up indefinitely with no idea when or if they're going to be released. And we have to all say that is utterly unacceptable. While the rest of the world's powering ahead on renewables, we're being left behind, we're losing opportunities. So I urge all of you, if you possibly can, go and support them, or at least put out a tweet, do something on Facebook, show your support for the Upland Protection Camp. So there's so many more things that I can refer to. I'll second the let's support our junior doctors with all of our might, because they don't really have a lot of experience of industrial action. A lot of people in this room do, so let's make sure we give them all the help and support that they possibly can. But I want to finish on one final thought. I get a lot of people saying to me, oh, well, you know, what are your plans for 2020? What about the 2010-20 general election? Well, I've got a response to that, which is 2020 is too far away. This government only has a very fragile, thin majority. It's even got a House of Lords that's acting as a defender of the people. Its hold isn't firm on power, and every action we take makes it a bit thinner, and we have to say, we can't wait till 2020, we have to get rid of this government long before that point. Thank you.
Greetings from the Fire Brigade Union to the conference here today. And I think meetings like this are an opportunity to discuss all the struggles that are underway, also try to map out a way forward for our movement and our class. And we take face in the trade union movement, I think, two particular challenges. The first, which I think has already been reflected in many of the contributions, is the question of austerity. That we have a government intent on forcing through further horrendous cuts to our public services, which will mean tens and hundreds of thousands of job losses, particularly in the public sector, a government intent on forcing through further privatisations of public services, a government that intends to force down the living standards and wages of workers, again brazenly announcing for the public sector 4 more years of a pay freeze and throwing the gauntlet down to public sector workers. On the 25th of this month we will have the Osborne announcing his next spending review, which will set out the next phase of those attacks all across our public services. The other key feature is the one that's just been mentioned, is our trade union, the trade union bill that is currently going through Parliament. And I think when we're discussing that, we need to say, why are they doing it? They're doing it precisely because of the first point. Because they intend to devastate public services and attack our people's living standards, they need to attack us in terms of the organisations that provide the first line of defence, and that is our unions. So they are clearly anti-trade union, but they want to undermine and weaken our ability to fight back against all the attacks that they are about to unleash upon us. The potential flashpoints that are going to come when this bill comes in, because if they tighten up the laws and they make it harder and harder for people to get lawful industrial action, and then on top of that, even if you jump through all those loops and hurdles, they then say the employer's got the right to bring in strike-breaking agency people, then people are going to resist and fight back, and quite rightly so, and the whole movement needs to organise in those circumstances to create mass opposition, mass picketing and mass protesting, regardless of what It's an interesting period. There has been a debate in the TUC, and I sit on the TUC General Council, on the TUC Executive, and I don't want to give away any confidential secrets or whatever, but the truth is, there is a debate. And my view is, if you have a debate, you're better off having that debate out in the open and thrashing out any disagreements that may exist, rather than pretending that they don't exist. Because there are some within our movement who, at the start of this discussion about the trade union bill, said this, that our audience has to be the 300 and whatever they are, 13 Tory MPs, and our aim has to be to win some concessions from them in this. So we have to try and find the reasonable ones who are likely to make those concessions. And the starting point for others of us was actually, that is completely the wrong starting point. Our audience is 6.5 million workers in trade unions. If we're serious about beating this law, which is likely to come in, then we're going to have to build a genuine mass movement rooted in workplaces, rooted in community, that ultimately can make any legislation they bring in irrelevant. And that's got to be our task. The Tories in 1971 brought in anti-worker legislation, and a year later it was made irrelevant by strike action across the country. And we've got to think, how do we set about building that type of movement today that we had then? So there are some enormous challenges facing us. I want to finish on 3 points about tasks that I think we need to face. First of all is the question of the change situation, because it's been mentioned already, the Corbyn victory. The Corbyn victory took British politics completely by surprise, certainly took the establishment by surprise. And we've got an opportunity. It is remarkable, and I think John McDonnell is coming today. It is remarkable that we have a leader of the Labour Party and a Shadow Chancellor who are prepared to come to events like this, who are prepared to unequivocally hold the place in the world and not apologise. We need to build a movement that says to the Labour Party right, and the Parliamentary Labour Party, hands off. They were elected. If you don't like it, clear off out of the way. We also need, secondly, to build a genuine mass movement aimed at rank and file trade unionists and rooted in our workplaces up and down the country. Because I have to say, if we're going to wait for that call to come from the TUC General Council, you might be waiting a bit of a longer time. Actually, it's more likely that a mass movement will be built, and then we, on the General Council, will hopefully support it at that point. And the final point to me is this, that it also gives us the opportunity, particularly with Corbyn's election victory, and my union supported Corbyn and we will defend him to the hilt. I don't agree with everything that Jeremy Corbyn or John McDonnell argues for, or their policies, but what it does do, it has raised the opportunity to discuss how we run this society. It has raised the opportunity to say there is a different way of doing things. It has raised the opportunity for us to say, do we have to live in a world where all the decisions are made in the interest of profit, or can we set out the aim of building a world which is run in the interest of the vast majority of working people here and across the globe? And that's a huge opportunity.
I'd like to say how proud I am to be speaking at this event amongst other people of the same nature and that and what we're all about. I'm an advanced scaffolder of 25 years, who's been virtually blacklisted for the last 10 years through these unscrupulous tactics of these unscrupulous employees. I'm a North East elected rank and file member. What has happened on Teesside is the best thing I've witnessed in the past 20 years. We've brought together, obviously, committees and of Unite and GMB and UCAP members. It's the best thing that's happened in the last 20 years, what we've seen with solidarity between construction workers now. Basically, what happens is if our local officers go into these companies that don't want to pay the national agreements, they will come back to the committees, there'll be formed mass meetings, and then we go from there, which normally leads to a protest on the gates on that the following Monday morning. So I would just like to say, in solidarity, get all your branches on the country, get these motions and your risks, your NISCs, with every sector you're in, and we've got to fight all day long. And remember, the union is only as strong as its members. Thank you.
And why is it that the Tories, one of the main pieces of legislation they're trying to push through, right, stuff on re-election is an attack on the trade union movement? Because let's face it, right, so there's some incredibly inspiring examples of trade unions fighting back, but also the level of struggle is low in this country at the minute and stuff, in compared to previous times really and stuff. And what it's really about is the Tories are absolutely terrified that the move that saw 250,000 people march on the streets on the People's Assembly demonstration will spill over into the workplaces, right? So, but they're right to worry about that. And in some ways, the Tories know their history a lot better, it seems to me, than our side does. Let's remember a few years ago, in 2011, there was 2.5 million of us out on strike in 2011 against attacks on public sector pensions. Over 1 million of us out in 2014 over public sector pay, right stuff. You know, we're 30 years on from the miners' strike, right? So obviously the miners were defeated, but the Tories and the Thatcher government knew that on 3 occasions that the miners nearly knocked that government over, right stuff over it. And Matt has already talked about the fact that the whole waves of anti-trade union legislation in the past that were brought in the Tories in the early 1970s, the Industrial Relations Act, was smashed by unofficial action from below that put pressure onto the TUC to call a general strike where 5 dockers had been thrown into jail, and actually those people were out of jail because the TUC threatened the action of 600,000 people who were on strike and on the streets in their defence. And that's what the Tories are absolutely terrified will happen. The second thing is, we're fighting this bill under different circumstances. Right, so we are fighting this bill, right, so under circumstances where the Labour leader and the Shadow Chancellor aren't prepared to join mass demonstrations, and when John Burgess was on strike in Barnet, John McDonnell was on his picket line. We're not talking about tilting at windmills overtaking on this legislation. We've got big guns who are lining up to try to defend trade union rights, and that gives us a set of circumstances where we could win victories, but we've got to talk about what that's about. Now, the TUC conference passed good stuff over the trade union bill. It talked about supporting generalised strike action against the bill. It talked about defending trade unions and trade unionists who found themselves outside the law. That's great, but actually we know at the minute that there is a gap between what has been said at TUC conference and actually what the mobilisation on the ground. And I want to, Matt talked about the trade union coordinating group. Next Saturday, there's an absolutely crucial meeting in London that everybody who's here should be at and should be trying to bring their workmates and colleagues along to a meeting on building a fight against austerity after Jeremy Corbyn's election. Because what the TUCG has done, unlike some other trade unions, is that they've argued that just simply one lobby of Parliament is not enough, and they've been organising protests, and they've been organising to try to mobilise people, and it seems to me that's absolutely an absolutely crucial step. See, to be honest with you, let's be honest, the TUC should be giving the lead over this. If the TUC, you know, we all know that actually if the TUC used the power it's got, organising 6.5 million workers, if it called for action, then the bill could be over tomorrow. If the TUC did reconvene a national conference, invited activists to come together, write stuff from across the country, right, you could see the impact that would have. But if they don't do it, then we have to ask ourselves the question, what do we do? And the truth is, at some point here, a group of workers will be attacked. At some point, agency workers will go across a picket line, or a national union will find itself the wrong side of the new thresholds with a ballot, and we have to ask ourselves the question then, what do we do in that circumstances? And then really, all the speeches and all the resolutions and everything else that we've done, right, stuff, will be put to the test, won't it? Because either they're going to drive these new laws through, which will make it more and more difficult for us to mobilise our side against austerity, or at some point, we are going to break these laws. That's going to have to be the question. And I think in some ways that's the key to the discussion really, stuff that we've got to have, because what does it mean for all of us? I think the first thing is, right, stuff, actually what will be the best way to challenge the anti-trade union laws in many ways is to go back to the kind of national coordinated strike that we saw in 2011 and 2014, because that can fundamentally challenge the Tories on these issues. Actually, if you read the Boss's papers, some of them are quite worried about this legislation. They talked about what happens about the 39.9% rule, right? So what happens if the RMT are 0.1% over the ballot, under the ballot threshold? Actually, because it could open up the possibility of people taking action. But the second thing of it is we have to say that if they do push these laws through, what are we going to do? Now, people have talked about the issue of Candy and Sandy and the rhymes that go on about it. But it was a privilege to be at SOAS the other week, because first of all, when you saw the Unison members meet that morning, they were worried. Of course they were worried. They want to support their steward, but on the other hand, this is breaking the law. This is opening yourself up. And the first morning, what they met, discussed and decided they would walk. And partly it was because of the political mood around amongst the students and the rest of it. The next morning, when the UCU people met alongside the Unison people, they were worried too, but they decided they would walk. In other words, what was created at SOAS was what you could call a coalition of the willing. Those people who decided when this issue had actually happened, they were going to walk. And it seems to me this is the argument we've got to start putting up now inside the trade union movement. Yes, we've got to argue that upstairs in the TUC, Francis O'Grady, the General Council, they should give a lead. That's absolutely right. But if they don't, and if Matt's right and we have to wait for the call to come and we might wait and wait and wait, then under that basis, right, stuff, just in the way that people rallied round the workers at the National Gallery, just in the way that people rallied round the workers at SOAS, we have to make a decision. If one group of workers is attacked in that way, If one group of workers finds themselves with agency workers being bussed across their picket lines to scabber to break their strike, then we will mobilise under that basis. We will build hundreds and we will get thousands onto their picket lines and the rest of it. Now that's, just to finish, that's easy to say, isn't it? Because you can talk about the general strike, you can talk about mobilising, you know, that's difficult, right, and stuff around it. But we have to start winning an argument now, don't we? What we do in each workplace, what we do on each stewards committee, right, stuff, what we do at each regional council, what we do in each college or campaign group and the rest of it, we have to win an argument that this is a fundamental attack. It's a fundamental attack on our basic civil liberties, our basic right to withdraw our labour. Under that basis, when the first time they use this legislation, we have to make sure that they think twice about ever using that legislation again. We've beaten anti-trade union laws in the past, we can do it again.
First of all, just want to bring solidarity greetings from Barnet Unison strikers. Just briefly, a little bit about Barnet and why Barnet workers are more than familiar about the anti-workers bill. Because for the last 7 years, we have been dealing with a right-wing, anti-union, anti-public sector, conservative administration that have no time for the trade unions, no time for workers. And we have been fighting a guerrilla war. And I'm proud that our branch has got a history of more strikes than any union branch in London. I'm proud. One of the leaders from our community campaign, Barnet Alliance Against Public Services, Chairs of Iceland in this room today, who's part of any struggle that we're going to win to defeat this worker bill has to involve organising the workforce, has to involve organising in the community, and has to mean joint trade union organising in order that we defeat the Tories. Because it isn't absolutely rocket science why the Tories are doing what they do today. They are unleashing their Armageddon public services agenda on the 25th of November to end public services. That's it. They're looking into the eyes of some of the general secretaries and they've seen weakness. They've seen people who are not prepared to organise. Well, I'm proud that we look the Tories in Barnet in the eyes and we say we're going to fight you every single step of the way. Are we going to save Barnet libraries? Yes! Are we going to save Barnet libraries? Yes! And my final one is, are we going to smash the Tories? Yes! Are we going to smash the Tories? Yes! Solidarity!
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so we represent probation officers and also family court workers, so we're used to enforcing the law. But I'd like, if you've ever broken the law, if you've ever committed a crime, I'd like you to put your right arm in the air. Now, for the last 2 years, 18 months, 2 years, we've seen the break-up and the privatisation of the probation service. So now it's become a whole lot harder for us to help people to change. And that makes you, that makes me, that makes all of us a lot less safe. We've seen the transformation of what was a gold standard public service. It used to win awards, international awards for its excellence, thrown to the walls to the companies like Sodexo and Interserve. There are 8 owners who now own 21 so-called community rehabilitation companies whose purpose is to maximise shareholder returns. We took 2.5 days of strike action, national action last year, and other unions were in dispute around about that same time, and we found it virtually impossible to coordinate our action with many of those trade unions. And there's always a tension between the specific interests of your dispute and the wider interests of the general dispute. But with the new trade union bill, there is no argument anymore. That argument is redundant. The Tories have acted collectively as a class. We must show collectively the same solidarity. And if that means in defiance of the law, then so be it. My last point, comrades, that's Steve Gillen from the POA can't be here because he's on strike. The POA are actually banned from taking strike action. It's illegal for the POA. But they've shown that they can go ahead and do it. There are not enough prisons for all of us.
And I stand here today proud of my union. Why? Because right now we are balloting our members for industrial action. And you will face the same onslaught against your working conditions which we in the BMA face today. We need you to support us. We need you to tell us where we are going wrong. We need you to stand alongside us. For if we as doctors lose this battle, then the government will not waste any time in stepping over the defeated carcass of the BMA and coming after your pay conditions in the other health sector. We all know that the government wants to destroy the very existence of a safe, effective, publicly funded NHS. It wants the NHS to fail, and it wants it to be seen to fail. So let's not underestimate what lies ahead for us. The very future of the NHS will depend on the action of every single member of my union, of every single health worker within every trade union over the next few months and years. And we shall be judged harshly if we fail. But we won't fail, not if we keep doing what we're doing, not if we keep moving. Now in 4 days, our ballot for industrial action closes. It is highly likely that there will be a substantial majority for a strike. What happens after? What happens after that mandate will depend on a number of foreseen and unforeseen factors. So the next few weeks are especially critical. When you leave this room, please educate yourselves about the details of the dispute. I would happily provide you briefings and materials. Get your national unions and local union branches to issue simple statements of support for us. We can use them. Is it not very good? Now you tell me. Can you hear me? So much better. I hope you heard some of my feelings. Okay, good. Okay, so let's just go back a few seconds to this. When you leave this room, educate yourselves. Please read into the detail of the dispute. I'm happy to provide further materials for you. Get the national unions and your local union branches to provide simple statements of support. We can use them. And educate the public about the wider issues at stake. Be ready to defend us doctors against the vociferous smears and obfuscation which will saturate the media in a few weeks. We in the BMA offer you our solidarity and we humbly beg for yours. It's been great to share the stage with such committed activists and organisations. Thank you very much. I hope you heard.
You have no idea how much money we are going to spend in order to invest in Hinkley Point nuclear power station, which is going to cost more than the Olympics, the Crossrail, and something else that costs an awful lot of money, all put together. And we will be paying twice the amount that we should be paying for our electricity because they want to invest in Hinkley Point in nuclear. So it's nuclear and fossil fuels all the way as far as Cameron and Osborne are concerned. That money should be spent on the infrastructure that we need, that will put people into work. They should be closing FE colleges, they should be investing in FE colleges, getting young people trained up in the infrastructure that we need. Final point I want to make is this. Those of us in the trade union movement, those of us in the more radical wing of the climate movement, we fought very, very hard for a demonstration with the title. Not just the People's March for Climate, that's all very good. But we want a demonstration that starts to focus on what the real issues are. So we fought very hard and we came up with the title of the demonstration, Climate, Justice and Jobs. Not everybody in the movement entirely agrees with that. Many people in the climate movement want to see something that actually is a lot more palatable to government. They want to try and present the climate movement as acceptable to government, believing that that somehow allows you much easier negotiation with government. That's a strategy that has failed. That's a strategy that's been trying. It failed at Copenhagen in 2009. It will fail again in 2010 if we allow that strategy to be the strategy that dominates the climate movement. What we need is a strategy that says we need a radical climate movement, a mass movement, one in which the trade union movement and the left has some weight and some influence, because that's the kind of mass movement that we've seen in the past brings about change, and that's the kind of mass movement that we need to build now to bring about a change that will actually mean that we can build the infrastructure and create the kind of society which will save ourselves and save the planet.
We're seeing the polarisation of politics on the left and the right, on the questions of austerity and on the questions of who's to blame for that. And that is why events like this, uniting the people who want to fight back, pulling up and refusing to be divided by the Tories' lies, when they want to blame refugees, when they want to blame migrants, and when they want to scapegoat Muslims, is absolutely crucial. And I think we've got our work cut out again. Just as before the Stop the War, a crucial argument was won after 9/11, that we don't blame Muslims for 9/11, that we absolutely stand in solidarity with Muslims against the brutal wars that cause the rise of terrorism. We need to absolutely defend Muslims again and say, don't let the racists divide us. And in terms of the questions of refugees, the work we do now is absolutely crucial to stopping people dying. We have got a very small window. Winter is round the corner, and David Cameron's saying there's no room at the inn. Well, if you think about the free houses David Cameron has, I think there's plenty of places we can have refugees. The question was asked in the last session on how we stop them dividing us, how we can win on the questions of refugees. We win how we've always won. It's building from below, it's going to our trade unions, it's going to our communities, it's pushing back against the racist lies, it's getting to the streets, and it's combating every time they push out any racist bar against us. So join us, please, support the winter appeal, get collections, and let's drive back this racist bar from the Tories.
Trade union political levy payers will all have to sign up again over a 3-month period in order to pay the political levy. Why is that so important? Because that political levy is what allows trade unions to have a political voice. I genuinely believe the key intent in the Tories in this bill is to cripple trade unions industrially, but also politically. They do not want trade unions and organised workers to have a political voice, part of the pernicious anti-democratic campaign they're running. Gerrymandering constituencies, the lobbying bill, the cleansing of the electoral register, and the silencing of all voices that could oppose their pernicious policies. Trade unions have to be political. Trade unions have to have a political voice, because no one else will stand up for working people. And you know, when we're talking about the Iraq election of Jeremy Corbyn, you know what we need inside the trade union movement? Some of that spirit and energy in the Corbyn campaign. Yeah? It's heartening and inspiring to see work being done by fast food workers and other young workers. We need people like that in the lead in our movement. We want people to know about their own power, because there's one thing I'm sure of. No matter what thresholds they introduce, no matter what legislation to stop strikes, there is no force more powerful than a well-organised, determined group of workers who are going to fight for their conditions and their welfare.
Sometimes we're told we can't win, but every year I come here and I find out that we've won more and more and more, and we do that because we stand together in solidarity. And the government knows that, it understands that, and that's why it's introduced a new bill. Its new bill is commuters. Its new bill is to end our opportunity to organise in the workplace. This new bill is to stop us from politically campaigning. This new bill is designed to criminalise shop stewards, criminalise health and safety reps, and criminalise those people who say it's wrong to bully, and it's wrong not to pay people a decent wage, and it's wrong to say that people must only ever have a 0-hour contract. And let's be clear about some of the things that we need to do. Let's understand our role. Let's accept that this is a fight that we must join. Let's recognise that we can't sit on our hands and believe that somebody else will do it. This fight is our fight, and we need every single person in this room, in our workplaces, in our community, to stand with us and come with us. Because if we don't, then it will be the end of the trade union movement. And you know what? We'll have been responsible for it. And I don't want that on my hands, and you shouldn't want that on your hands. And let me say this message, because it's not about dividing trade unions, but it is about sending a clear message to the TUC, whose leadership I believe has been seriously lacking. Now, we've been calling consistently for a general strike, and they don't listen to us. Maybe you should listen to this one, because this echoes what she's been saying as the General Secretary of the TUC. She claims that this bill is unfair, it's unjust, it will nuke the trade union movement, it will leave us defenceless, it will leave workers defenceless. So let's make this decision, and let's hear this call from the TUC. When they put this bill through Parliament and it passes, we will refuse as a movement to accept one single item of the anti-trade union. Let's make the TUC realise that leadership is what's called for when we fight the Tories. No matter how many times we take the kicking, they will keep kicking us if we don't fight back. So it's time to fight back. Let's make it clear. On the trade union bill, the difference between a worker and a slave is your right to withdraw your labour. The right to campaign politically to change our society is the right of every single person in our community and in our society. And I say to you this, because this is very, very important. In 1948, Natalie Bennett said, and I think this is a very critical statement, because maybe I won't get pillared by the Sun and a few other newspapers for making this comparison, unlike the one I made with David Cameron and Adolf Hitler. But if you take policies, I mean, what I got into trouble for with that was because I said, tweeted a picture that said we must cut workers' pay and remove the right to strike. Adolf Hitler, 1933. You know what? You don't want comparing to a fascist dictator. Don't use policies from Mein Kampf. But I tell you, no attempt at ethical or social seduction shall eradicate from my heart the burning hatred for the Tory